In this video, I'm going to change this old CD player and radio out of this Hyundai i10 to this 9-inch touchscreen unit running wireless Android Auto and Apple Carplay. This is my daughter's 2014 Hyundai i10. This is an SE model, so it doesn't have the Bluetooth, and this is just a CD player with an FM radio. She uses her iPhone on a cradle here, but she wants Apple CarPlay to get Spotify music in her car. She's not too worried about the radio. So I've bought a new head unit so we can get wireless Apple CarPlay. She can use Spotify via that. We'll also then have Bluetooth so she can take calls safely. And there is the option to install a reversing camera as well, but I don't think I will fit. So this is what I bought. It's all arrived this morning, and in this video I'm going to try to fit this in this i10. I'll also cover what I bought, why I bought this particular model, and what I found when you're trying to buy these touchscreen Android units from China. And you've got to be very careful with the specs because they vary wildly. And I will try to see if I can get this working in this car, get the steering wheel buttons working. This has also got a rear reversing camera. I don't think I'm going to bother fitting that, but I'll go through the reasons for that. And this is going to be a long video, so there will be chapters along the bottom of the screen to help you navigate your way through this video. When looking at what to buy, it's a minefield of specs, prices and contradicting information, so I'll cover what I found and what to look out for. First off, you can buy traditional brands like Sony, Pioneer, etc. But these are expensive and work out about 4 times the cost of the Chinese stuff, and then you also have to source the relevant parts you need to make it fit the i10. If you just search all the normal platforms for Hyundai i10 CarPlay or Hyundai i10 Android, you'll find a vast array of choices. I found the ones on Amazon all to be pretty low spec. Temu seemed expensive, and AliExpress had the best choices and the lowest prices. Many listings included multiple models, so you have to be careful what you pick. First off, look to see if it's for left-hand drive or right-hand drive. While the head unit isn't any different, the mounting frame differs because the vent diameters are different. Many listings don't specify left or right-hand drive, so assume they're left-hand drive, and being in the UK, I could dismiss all those straight away. Next, you have to be very careful with the technical specs of the head unit, as this can vary wildly. The golden rule here, as with everything in life, is you get what you pay for. You have to look at the screen type and resolution. Generally there's TN, IPS or QLED. Then there's the processor type and the number of cores. Then there's the amount of memory. You'll see 2 numbers shown, such as 4GB/128GB. The first is critical as this dictates the performance of the unit. Too low and it will be laggy and unresponsive. The second number is the amount of internal storage for loading apps, music files, etc. This is less important if you're using Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, as all the files or streaming is coming from your phone. Then you have to check the actual functions and check if Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is wired or wireless. Then you have options for 4G connectivity, reversing cameras, dash cams and external microphones. So when you put all of this together, there's a vast array of choices. Also, I found many of the listings were cut and paste jobs, and the images didn't match the specs in the description, so it wasn't clear what was actually being sold. So just remember, you get what you pay for. I went for this unit, which had a mid-range IPS screen but with a high resolution, 6GB of memory, a 4-core processor, wireless CarPlay, and I went for the optional reversing camera and external microphone as that was only a few quid extra. Then being Black Friday week, the prices were very reasonable for the spec. So I haven't changed the head unit in the car for probably 25 years or more now. I was always doing it when I was younger, in my late teens and early 20s, and actually my first car had a 8-track cassette player, so that shows how old I am. But I was regularly changing the single DIN units for CD players because CDs were new then. They were the type that had detachable faceplates because people were breaking into cars, nicking the radios. But this will be the first time I've done a custom unit like this where the radio is integrated into the car, and we've got to change all of this to fit this one in here. And I bought this 9-inch touchscreen Android unit, and then this kit is what makes it fit into this Hyundai i10. So this is the kit that arrived this morning, and there were 4 individual packages in the bag. So let's go through what I've got here. So firstly, we have got the head unit, and this is very much a sort of generic Android head unit. It's a 9-inch touchscreen, and this will be sold to fit in all sorts of vehicles. And then you have this sort of custom kit to make it fit a particular car, and in this case obviously the i10. So we've got the touchscreen, and then in the box we've got some mounting brackets, and then we've got the cables. So we've got a cable there which we're not actually going to use because there's a replacement one suitable for the i10 in that box. We've got that cable for all the audio and visual inputs. There are 2 USB sockets, and then we've got the GPS antenna, and then there is that cable which I think is for the reversing camera. And then included in this is a little instruction guide, but I'll cover that in more detail in a minute because that's not in the car at the moment. And then here we have got another package which is the reversing camera. So I opted to buy the one with the reversing camera just because it also then came with the microphone, and it was only a few quid extra. But I don't think I'm going to bother fitting that camera because that's quite involved, getting that routed to the back of the car and then mounting that in the rear bumper. So that's the other package, which is the microphone, which we do want because I want her to have safe hands-free Bluetooth. And then this is the box of stuff which is customized for the Hyundai i10. So we've got a little instruction page there. And then this is the important bit. So this is the replacement fascia, and obviously it's going to replace the original one because this houses the new head unit. And this is where you've got to be very careful when you're buying a kit for a Hyundai i10, because there's a left-hand drive version and a right-hand drive version, and it's the frame that differs. And even though they look identical, the vent holes are slightly different. So you've got to buy the right one for your vehicle, and you've got to assume if it doesn't say it's a left or right-hand drive, you've got to assume it's a left-hand drive. So in the UK, obviously we need to buy a right-hand drive version, so you've got to look for adverts that actually state that it's right-hand drive. So in the kit, we've got some blanking plates. So that is these here, which we're going to mount in the frame, depending on what we've got to transfer from this one to the new frame. We've also got that replacement cable, so we're not going to use the cable that came with the stereo. We're going to replace it with that, and that should then be suitable for the connectors behind the back of that original radio. And it also comes with a trim tool, a little Phillips screwdriver, and some little screws in there. So that's the kit, and then in here we've got a sheet which is showing us what we've got to do, and this is just involving this fascia. So first off, we've got to get this one out of the vehicle, and I understand these are pretty tight, and obviously we don't want to damage the dash. So I'm going to disconnect the 12-volt battery to start with, and then try to pry this out. And then we've got to swap the vents and the buttons over to the new one, and then we can start looking at mounting that head unit into this frame and sorting out all the wiring. So first off, let's disconnect that 12-volt battery, because that has a few advantages. It means I'm not going to short anything out when I'm messing around with the wiring behind the radio. It's also going to stop that bonging because my door is open, and it also means interior lights aren't going to drain the 12-volt battery because I'm going to have my door open there for many hours now. So we can just disconnect the negative lead and put that out of the way there. So next we've got to get this fascia out, and this is probably quite difficult. It's really sat in there quite well, and you're probably going to want more plastic tools than just the one that came with the kit. I've got another two the same and various other ones as well. You're probably not going to want to use a screwdriver because you've got a chance of damaging some of the trim around there, and we've just got to get in there and pry that out. The other thing you can do is look at your new frame and see where the clips are as well, because obviously they're going to be in the same place on the original one. Removing this original frame is really difficult. These i10s are built so well. This is really in here tight. So I'm sort of trying along the bottom because that's the longest section without any clips on this frame. So that's got the most flexibility, but you want to sort of attack it where these types of clips are, because that's what's holding it in. But I've watched some other YouTube videos which I'll put up on the screen. One interesting one shows it pulling it from behind these buttons, taking these buttons out and then yanking it. But most of them just show you working around the edge and trying to release the frame. But you'll notice on nearly all the videos they do have damage on the dash. Some of the videos start with the frame already removed, but I've watched those and you notice they have damage, so they don't show you this part. But it seems most people are marking the original dash while they're doing this, and I'm trying to not do that, obviously. Also, my theory is if I'm going to end up putting a dent in the original dash, I'd rather it somewhere at the bottom where it's not in your line of sight like it would be along that top edge. But one thing that is clear is you're going to need trim tools much stronger than these orange ones. You're going to need some like this. I've got a clip out here and out there, but it is still really stiff in there, so you're going to need some good sturdy plastic tools to do this. And already I've noticed that this black plastic that's on the upper part of the dash does mark much easier than this plastic. So do start at the bottom and work your way up, because this is much softer, and even with a plastic tool that is marked there. I've never experienced any car trim which is so difficult to remove. So if you've done this before and got any tips, let me know in the comments below and I'll pin it and share it. So far I've found that you've just got to keep working your way around, levering that out. It will deform this a little bit because you've really got to put some force on it, but you're just going to have to keep working your way around. So I've got all of that out, all the way up to there, but it's still in at the top. So you just got to go around and work this out without breaking it or breaking the clips, of course. But it is unbelievable how stiff that is in there. So finally this is out. So the way I did it was starting here, working along, just putting the trim clips on the blue plastic because that is much tougher. Just have to keep working along, prying it out. Once I got to there and there, then the top I sort of did with my fingers, but again pushing these clips at the top at the same time with the pry tool, and the top eventually did ping out, but even that grabbed on really well. Anyway, now that's out, we can disconnect the cables and start getting it all out. So next you've got to remove these three connectors from the back of the switches here. This is your seatbelt warning light, hazard light switch and an airbag warning, and these were all very difficult to remove. So the first one, the one on the left, is the seatbelt warning light, and you've just got to get a screwdriver in there and push down on that tag, but you don't want to push on the lump on the top, which is all you can actually see. You just slide it to the front of the lump, so just in there, and you push down there where my fingernail is, and then that should come out. That's the easiest one to take out. The next one is that flat one, which is on the back of the hazard light switch. I just got a screwdriver in there and sort of levered it out. There's a little tag on the top and I sort of levered it out with that. Again, that was more difficult than it needed to be. And then the final one, which is the airbag light, Again, there's a tag on the top, and I don't know whether I pushed down or pulled up, but anyways, you can see that. Let's just have a look at that. Yeah, there's a tag on the top of that. So, yes, pushing down on the back of it, so you can do that with your fingers. Pushing down on the back where the wiring is pulls the front up, and that then releases that one. So at some point you've got to remove these switches, the air vents, and all these yellow plastic ends on the mounting clips off this original frame and put them onto the new one. But I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to get the stereo in and make sure that works in case I've got to go back to the original installation. So by the looks of it, this head unit is just held in with these 4 Phillips screws. And then with those screws removed, you can then lift this out and then disconnect those cables at the back. So using the wiring adapter which came with the i10 kit and not the one that comes with the head unit, it makes the wiring a breeze. That black connector there accepts the 2 original white connectors, and then that's straight into the back of the head unit. The only other cable here is this reverse wire, and I guess that's for the reversing camera, which I'm not going to bother fitting in this case. I think she can do without the reverse camera because the i10 is such a small car anyway, and it's such a lot of work to get that cabling from here to the back of the vehicle and then mount that in the rear bumper. I don't think I'm going to bother with that one. So with this adapter, it is just a breeze to sort out the wiring. So with those 2 in, we can now put the stereo on the end of that and connect up the 12-volt battery and make sure this works. So I've plugged those 2 wires into the back of the head unit. The only other wiring that's needed is the radio antenna, and then install the GPS antenna up on the dash somewhere, but I'll do that in a minute. But I've now connected the 12-volt battery back up, put the ignition on, and I just want to check that this is working before we go any further. Look at that. That looks nice, doesn't it? So while this head unit is basically working with just these cables installed, there's an awful lot of others we've got to consider. So let's just run through and look at the cables. So first off, we've got the GPS antenna, which is going to go on there. So we're going to need to mount that on the top of the dashboard somewhere and get that wire from there up round the dashboard to below the windscreen. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. Next, we've got this cable, which the only thing on there I think I'm going to be using is the black one there, which is going to connect up to the microphone. I don't think I'm going to use the rest of those, but anyway, that can plug in and just hang in the void behind the head unit, but I might wrap some fabric tape on all of that so it doesn't cause any rattling. Then we've got this one, which I think is for the camera, which I'm not going to fit, but again I will fit that and just tie that one up. Then we've got the reversing camera, which I'm not going to bother fitting. Then we've got the microphone, which I guess I'm going to want to fit up there somewhere, so that's got to be run around the edge of the windscreen and into the dash to the back of the unit. So next we've got 2 USB cables, 2 USB ports. So I don't know whether I need these yet, but I'm going to wire them up anyway, and for now probably just run them behind the dash and leave them in the driver's footwell or something like that. So these would be used if you want to plug in a USB stick and listen to some MP3 music, or you would use them if you wanted to connect your phone up to the head unit by a wire. I don't think I need to do that in this case because CarPlay on this is wireless and my daughter has an iPhone. I think Android Auto is wired, so you would have to use one of these ports for that. That's not going to be an issue in my daughter's case because she's using an Apple. But anyway, I'm going to wire these in and run them somewhere, because I don't want to take that frame out again, because that is a bugger to remove, and there's a high chance that the clips on this replacement frame are going to be weaker than the original one. So I don't want to remove that once it's in place, because there's a chance that some of the clips might break. You've also got a USB port down here in the car, but I've read that that isn't compatible with a lot of these sort of Chinese head units, but there is a £40 cable and circuit you can buy to make the original Hyundai USB port compatible with head units, and then therefore you don't need to use these. I think that's the situation anyway, but anyway, I haven't got that, so for now I'm going to wire these in and either get them down to here, which is going to be a bit naff. Probably better to get them in the footwells or maybe in the glove box, and then at least they can be used, and just wrap them up so they don't rattle. Also, there is a little instruction manual with this head unit, and I'll just show you what it consists of. So it's got all the languages, so the English part is only those 4 pages. So it's really minimal, but it gives you 2 QR codes. One is for the full digital user manual and one is for a video. And these are actually pretty good for a cheap Chinese device. The manual is pretty thorough. So when you use the QR code for the manual, it takes you to a page where you click to view the PDF. However, it doesn't seem to be a PDF. It looks like you're just viewing a huge graphic, but it works fine on a mobile phone. And the manual is quite thorough, actually. It's quite good to see. But I have shared this with my laptop, and I've tried to get the PDF version so I can save it and keep it for future reference. But I just cannot seem to decipher the link or get a PDF or even print this. So apart from just viewing it in real time, I can't seem to do any more. I can't print it, I can't sort of save it, I can't open it in any other sort of format. It's a weird one. And then that other QR code takes you to a video which you can view full screen, and this is basically showing you how to use the menu system and the setup on the touchscreen on that. And again, that video is pretty thorough and very helpful. So in my case now, it's starting to get a bit too dark to be trying to install these cables throughout the dash. So I'm going to do that tomorrow. So this evening, I'm going to take these frames inside, transfer everything from the old frame to the new frame, and then be back on this in the morning. So a quick correction on the USB cables. Before I've gone in this evening, I thought I'd pair my phone up with this via Bluetooth, and it did that just fine, and straight away Android Auto loaded, and as you can see it's running Android Auto and Google Maps there full screen. So it's doing this wirelessly, and the original sales advert said that wasn't the case. It said Android Auto would be wired and Apple CarPlay is wireless, but clearly both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is going to be wireless. So that probably means I don't need to install those USB cables, but maybe I'll just get them in and leave them in the glove box or something in case she wants to plug in a USB stick, but you certainly don't need them for your phone connection. So I'm now removing the components from the original frame to the new frame, and you want to do this on something soft where you're not going to damage the surface of the plastic. So I've started with the hazard light switch, because if you remove that you can then get to the tags on either side to remove the other lights. So to remove that, you just get a screwdriver in there and push the prongs in either side, and that will push through the frame. But when I've come to put it into the new frame, it was really stiff. So stiff that I've even got some calipers and have started measuring the holes, because I thought I had to get the file out to make the hole bigger. But that wasn't the case. And when you put this switch back into the original frame, you realise how stiff it is. But it was much stiffer in this frame, and I do wonder whether that is going to work. It is now springing back, but when I first put that in, it wasn't springing back, it was staying stuck down, but that has started to move now. So I had to use nearly all my strength to push that through enough that the little tags on either side sprung out to hold it. Anyway, that's now in. And then to get these two light units out, you just push the tags either side with a screwdriver, at the same time pushing down on the switch to pop it out. So on both of these switches, I found it's easier to push the outer clip in first and push it out and get the switch at an angle. And then this side, you don't really need to push it with a screwdriver, it will just come out like that. And then obviously the opposite for the other one I've already done. So you have to remove these yellow and white plastic ends off the mounting lugs and transfer them to the new frame. You can just about do this with 2 fingernails, but I found it easier to slide a screwdriver in either side and ping them off that way. And these clips just have little lugs on the inside which go in these holes, and that's what keeps them in place. And then you can move them onto the new frame and just push them down into place. Then next we need to move the air vents over, and these are held in place by 4 lugs, and you can see those also on the new frame. You can use a flat blade screwdriver to lever the plastic uprights away from the lugs on the air vents, and I found dropping a matchstick in on each one held it there permanently, which then allowed me to pop the air vent out. You can then transfer the vents across to the new frame, but I've found that I really had to push down hard to make them snap into place. It took an awful lot of squeezing to get those clips to snap back onto the side of the vents. So that's all transferred over, but there's one clip on both vents that isn't sitting home. But I don't want to force it anymore and break the clip, because then it would be useless anyway. It's pretty useless as it is because it's not holding, but there are 3 other clips on both vents holding it in place, and I don't think anyone is going to be pushing at that point because this new screen covers it and protrudes more than the vent, so I don't think the vent's ever going to get hit, so I'm going to leave those as they are. So there's only one other difference between the new frame and the original frame, and that's these bits of felt which are stuck all around it, and these are going to stop any rattles. But this frame was so stiff in the car, I don't think it's going to rattle anyway. But I have some fabric tape, so I'm just going to stick a couple of bits on my new frame, one there, just where these longer bits are, and just see whether I can replicate that. So I've done that, but I can't see that it's going to make too much of a difference. So this morning I'm back in the car and I'm getting the rest of these cables back in. So the first thing is the microphone. I've decided just to put it up there. I've taken the little crocodile clip off it, shoved it between the hard plastic trim there and the roof lining, ran the cable down inside the rubber there, and then taken off this side panel, pulled the rubber out so I can get the wire through there above the fuse box, and then I'll route that up through so it's behind the stereo. So next is this GPS antenna, which actually I don't think I really need, because you're only going to use that if you're using the inbuilt navigation, which my daughter's going to be using Apple CarPlay all the time. But anyway, I might as well fit it. So ideally you want this on top of the dash, but trying to route it round there is quite difficult because this doesn't separate. These 2 bits of plastic, you can't get anything down in there. So I asked Grok, can you put GPS antennas inside the dash? And the AI said you can, and it doesn't matter which way around you stick this, you just need a clear view to the sky, and all this dash is getting a clear view up there through the windscreen. But you just don't want any metal in the way, but there's no metal under there. So what I'm going to do is just stick it behind the head unit inside the dash there. So that gets rid of any cable routing issues. The only other issue though is this top surface is ribbed and there's nowhere flat enough to stick that. So I could either get in there and try to shave some of the ribs off, or what I was thinking of doing is just putting a great big dollop of silicone on there, sticking it in there with some masking tape, and hopefully that will then dry and stay in there. The other alternative, I guess, is you could stick it on the back there against the ducting for the air vents, but then it's going to be pointing that way and you really want it pointing that way. So I think sticking it on the underside of there as far forward as you can get, so it's got a good uninterrupted view through the glass, well, through the plastic dashboard, through the glass, and you want to keep it away from any metal, because metal is what kills the signal. So I found a better solution for this GPS antenna. I'm not sure whether you can see, but this is the antenna cable, and then I've got it up here wedged between the air ducting here and the top of the dash there, and there's a flat surface there that you can wedge that in, and that's tight between the ducting and the dash, so it's not going to rattle, and it's orientated in the right way as well, so that's going to work okay. Because I'm not installing this rear camera, all the wiring's done. I've got the GPS antenna there, I've got the microphone there, I've got the original wiring connectors there which are going to that bank of lights and switches, and all I've got to do now is mount the frame, the head unit into the frame, and you can see there are 5 holes for that, 2 on either side, 1 at the top, and use these little screws that they provided with a screwdriver. They actually provided 6 screws, but there's only 5 mounting holes. So we screw that head unit into the frame, then we can offer that up and connect all the cables. And we do need to connect these other cables. So in this assembly, I'm only using the one, which is for the microphone. And even though this is for the rear camera, you do still need to plug it in. And it's because these 2 little blue wires are actually antennas. So one is for the Wi-Fi and the other is for something else. I can't remember now. But anyway, you've got to plug that into the back of the head unit to get your Wi-Fi signal, even if you're not using the yellow connector. So that's the screen mounted, but I found that the screws were really tight and I couldn't get enough leverage on this little screwdriver provided. So I tried one of my screwdrivers, a Wera, which are the best, Phillips size 1, but that chewed up the screws as well. So I suspect these screws are JIS rather than Phillips. But anyway, I got them in using the supplied screwdriver. You may also notice that I stuck a bit of silicone adhesive around those lugs on the air vents which weren't sitting home properly. One nice thing with this unit is every wiring harness has a different size connector on the end, so there's no doubt where they go. You don't need to look at the manual to snap them all in the right place. So now we've just got to connect it all back up, get those wires in on the original switch and lights at the bottom of the panel, and then connect all the stereo ones up, including the radio aerial, which is with the white blocks there. And then I'm going to put some tape around it all, just so any loose connectors don't end up rattling in there. And then we can offer that back and snap it all back home. So I've wrapped this fabric tape around the main connector block there and some of my wrapped up wires, so hopefully it won't rattle. And the final thing is just to connect the 12-volt battery to make sure it all works. So let's just turn on the ignition, and we've got the head unit working there. I'm just going to turn on the side lights and we can see that it dims, so that's good. It did do something on the screen there at the same time, but anyway, the only issue I've got is this hazard light switch is a bit sticky. It's working now. When I first put this in and turned the ignition on, or sorry, connected the 12-volt battery, I had the hazard lights working and this switch wasn't popping back. But that seems to have proved now, so that's the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about. But anyway, this is all good now, so I can see if I can snap that back into position. The other thing you might want to do before you push this all back is to go into the radio app and scan for radio channels, because that's going to confirm you've got your aerial plugged in properly at the back, and this is finding frequencies and saving them into presets there, so that's all working good. And then hopefully this will snap back into place as tight as the original one. Just make sure nothing is in the way. Right, that's snapped in that corner, but then it springs out in this corner. But then, considering how tight the original one was, I'm not surprised. There. So, just got to get that top edge. That's snapped in there. There. Don't want to push on the screen though. Make sure they're still moving. So I think that's in. It's certainly clicked in here. It's just at the top. I can see a bit of that felt I put on the frame. So that should go in more there. But I don't think it does. So that's a shame. And you can see there, even though I took a lot of care, the dash is damaged there. But as I said, they all seem to be when you look at other people's videos on YouTube. But anyway, we can now remove that. Except I've got it pinched there where I didn't remove the plastic properly from the edge when I screwed it down. That's a shame. I thought I'd done that. Maybe that's why that top screw wasn't going in properly, because of the plastic was wedged in there. I'm trying to remove that carefully so it doesn't tear. I don't want a bit of plastic sticking out there. There we go. So there we go, that's now installed, but I've now got to go through the settings and set this up. So this is where you can refer to the user manual under that QR code, but the video under that QR code runs through it all really easily. And part of that is setting up the buttons on the steering wheel so they interact properly with the head unit. So we go to home, then all apps, across the settings, and then this is where you would scroll down and we've got steering learn there. So we can do a reset to start with. So now we want to select a button. So I want volume up. So let's select volume plus to start with, and then press and hold the steering wheel button, and that's recorded it. So then we want volume down, press and hold that, that's recorded that. So next we want mute, which is that one there. That's recorded that. And then these, we've got up and down, which I'm going to do that one and that one, which is basically left and right. And then this one, I guess is mode. So let's assign that to that. But of course you can make and do what you like, which is really nice. So I've just realised I've forgotten to install the two USB cables. I should have realised there were still empty sockets on the back of the head unit. So that's annoying, but I'm not going to risk taking this back out again and risk breaking any lugs on this frame. So we're going to leave those out in this case. Fortunately, because this is wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, we shouldn't really need the USB sockets. The other thing which isn't so good is this hazard light switch is now too stiff, which I'm not surprised because it was stiff when I put it into the frame. So that's now sort of sitting flush with the two panels either side. But when I push it, it's not springing back. So the hazard lights is now on, but I can't push it again to switch it off. So what I'm doing is using one of these trim tools. Let's use one that's got a thinner end, and doing that, and that's now pushed it back a little bit, still indented a little bit, so it's not coming all the way back. There, the hazards are back on again. So hopefully that will improve, but it's all just too tight. It was tight anyway, and now it's even tighter that the frame is pushed into the dash. So that's a shame. So finally, I'll just give my thoughts of this head unit after I've been playing with it for a little while. While I'm here, I'll just show you Google Maps in Android Auto. So this is Android Auto. I can put it into satellite view there and get rid of that. And the screen is really nice, really sharp. I'm quite impressed with the screen on this. But like a lot of these sort of units, you've got this sort of clashing of systems. So you have all the base systems which run in the Android operating system, and that's basically all of these apps. But then you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which run depending on what phone you've got within range. So it can be a bit confusing because I've got Google Maps here, but that isn't using Android Auto. That's the Google Maps installed on the system, and that's what you don't want to use because you don't have any data connection. Well, I don't on this one anyway. So that isn't really going to help much. So you sort of have this clash between the two systems. So you've got to hit this Z link to get back to either Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And as soon as you do something on here, like go to the radio, then you've got to go back to Android Auto. And I found I could be doing things on here and Android Auto suddenly comes up and it cancels what you're doing. So it is a bit annoying, but to be honest, they're all like that. I'm sure once you're driving and using it, it's going to default to either Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, and you're going to do everything in that. So I've got Spotify, I can start playing, I've set up the buttons. So the volume there works, as does the mute. So that all works very well. I do find though the sound is very bassy. So I've had to go into the sound settings and drop the bass right down because it makes the door speakers vibrate and makes the door cards vibrate. But the sound is pretty good for this little i10. It's better than what I was expecting. The other thing to note, it does have a built-in microphone there at the top of the screen. There's a little hole there and it says mic, and there's also a reset button there. And that wasn't particularly clear on the adverts. So if you don't want to select the model that has the mic and go to the effort of installing that, it does have an onboard microphone there for your Bluetooth calls. So overall, it's a bargain for what it does, and it gives us Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, both wireless, which is what I wanted. So she can use her Spotify. I've got to see if I can tidy up this interface and maybe remove some of these options, because in reality she's only going to use that one. Oh, and the other thing is quite nice. It's got automatic brightness and dark mode and everything based on the light switch. So that all works very well. The screen's nice high quality. The sound is good. I think it's making these speakers sound better than it did with the original head unit. So that's good. So overall, I'm very pleased with it. The only downside is this framework and the hazard light switch. So yeah, I've only lightly brushed that and the hazards have come on. So that might be an issue when you're driving, touching the screen. You might accidentally put the hazard lights on. So maybe I might have to take this frame out and see if I can make that be a little bit freer. I don't know. Time will tell. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there. So if you found this video useful, please do click the thumbs up. That really does help. And I've made other videos on this Hyundai i10, and in the video description below will be a link to a playlist to those. Okie doke, I'll see you on the next one. The videos I make on this channel are primarily to help others and share knowledge. If you found a video helpful, please show your appreciation by at least clicking the thumbs up button, and leaving a comment also helps too, as does subscribing to the channel. All of this is free of charge. I do not use paid memberships or Patreon, which is how most YouTubers earn their money. I only earn from the YouTube ad commissions. But under every video on this channel is a super thanks button. So if you found a video particularly useful, or maybe it saved you money or time, then please consider a donation using the super thanks button. You could buy me a coffee, a pint, or contribute to the running cost of this channel. There's over 1100 videos on this channel now, so please have a browse, use the search, and have a look at the playlists.